Welcome back. Today's episode, When a Church Steps into the Crowd, Safety Ministry at Parades and Public Events. Welcome to Sanctuary Peacemakers. This is your frontline guide to safety and security inside houses of worship with your host, Unity. Now, let's enter the crucible of our discussion. Today I want to talk about something a little different, but still very connected to church safety ministry. I want to talk about parades. More specifically, I want to talk about what it looks like when a church steps out of its own building and into a public crowd. That could be a city parade, a holiday parade, a community event, a festival, or something similar. For this episode, I'm mainly going to focus on parades because that is the example that I have direct experience with. But some of the principles apply anytime the church is representing itself in a public outdoor setting. And I think this matters because the moment the church leaves its property, the environment changes. Inside the church, you know the building. You know the doors in the parking lot. You know the people that normally attend. And you know where the children's ministry is and the exits and how a normal Sunday routine works. A parade is different. You're in public. You are surrounded by people you do not know. There are vehicles and crowds and children and noise and distractions, and that route is often controlled by someone else. The church may have a float and people may be walking alongside it, and kids may be handing out candy, or church members may be passing out materials. Everyone is smiling and waving and talking and laughing and enjoying the moment. And all of that is good. But it means the safety ministry cannot completely shut its eyes just because the event is fun. I have been part of a couple parades with churches I have attended. The one I want to focus on for this episode was a city parade, I believe around the 4th of July, but the specific holiday, it's not really the point. What matters is that our church was participating publicly. We had a float, and most of the people were walking beside it or behind it. Some were passing out church materials, and a lot of the kids were handing out candy to other children along the parade route. I was walking towards the rear end of the float, and for that parade, I was part of the safety ministry. So I was there to enjoy it. I was there with my church, and, I was smiling and walking and being part of the group and enjoying the day just like everyone else, but I was also watching. That is a balance I want to talk about because safety ministry members are still part of the church. We are not outside the body looking in. We are not there to act cold and distant or suspicious of everyone around us. At a parade, we should be able to smile and wave and talk and laugh and enjoy the event. But we also have to stay aware. That does not mean being tense. It means being present enough to notice what is going on around you. Jesus said in Matthew 10:16, "Behold, I am sending you out as sheep into the midst of wolves. So be as wise as serpents and innocent as doves." That verse fits this kind of situation well. Now, I don't want to overstate the danger of a parade. Most parades are peaceful community events. Families come out, kids sit along the curb, and people wave. Churches participate and businesses participate and local groups show up. There's music and candy and decoration and a lot of community pride. But Jesus' words still speak to the mindset, wise and innocent, not fearful and paranoid, not careless and naive, wise and innocent. A church in a parade should look like a church. We should be warm and approachable. We should reflect Christ well in public. At the same time, wisdom means we do not pretend the environment is controlled just because everyone is having fun. One of the biggest differences between a parade and an event at the church is that the church is no longer setting the environment. You are participating in someone else's event. The route is usually set by the city. Police or parade volunteers may control the streets. Other floats and vehicles are around you. Crowds line both sides of the road. People come and go from different directions. Children are moving around. Families may be crossing side streets, and participants might be entering and exiting staging areas. That's a lot of movement. And in the middle of that, your church group is trying to stay together, represent the church, keep children safe, and enjoy the experience. That takes more awareness than people may realize. In our case, the safety ministry was fairly casual. Some of us had shirts with the church logo on them, but we were dressed much like the rest of the church. That was appropriate for the event. A parade is not the place where safety ministry needs to look intimidating or separate themselves from everyone else. That is especially true if some of the members are armed. There were a couple of us who were carrying, but we were careful to keep everything concealed. The goal was not to draw attention. We were not trying to alarm onlookers or make the church look like it came to the parade expecting trouble. And that matters. There is a time and a place for visible security, depending on the event and the situation. But in a normal public parade where the church is walking with families and children, the safety ministry should be careful about its appearance. The public witness of the church matters. A church can be prepared without looking aggressive. During that parade, the float was surrounded by church members, and there was a safety ministry member positioned on each side of it. That was important because the float is still a moving vehicle or trailer. Even at slow speed, it has blind spots. People can drift too close, and children can get excited. Someone walking alongside can be distracted by the crowd. A person on the float may not see what is happening near the wheels or behind the vehicle. Having safety-minded people around the float helps keep attention on the space around it, not in a dramatic way, just in a practical way. When you have a vehicle moving through a crowd with children nearby, somebody needs to pay attention to the edges of that movement. The candy issue is another good example. In a lot of parades, candy becomes one of the main things children are watching for. Kids along the route want it. Kids from the church want to hand it out. Parents are watching and people are waving. The whole thing feels harmless. But candy can create a safety problem if it is handled carelessly. At our parade, people were mostly handing candy directly to children along the side of the street. Sometimes it was tossed gently to the side, but it was not just being thrown randomly in the road. That was the right approach. Even if the road is closed, there are still floats and vehicles and trailers and groups moving through the route. If candy lands on the street, kids may run out without thinking, and a child watching from the curb is focused on the candy, not the wheel of a trailer or the next float coming behind it. So the issue is not whether candy is allowed, the issue is how it is handled. A small decision like handing it directly to the children instead of throwing it in the road can reduce unnecessary risk without taking away the fun. The same thing applies to the children walking with the church. A parade is exciting for kids. They are out in the public and walking with the church, handing out candy and seeing people wave at them and being a part of something bigger than a regular Sunday morning. It's a good experience. But excitement can make children less aware. They may speed up or slow down or drift toward the crowd or stop to talk or fall behind without realizing how far ahead the group has moved. That actually happened during our parade. One of the children or the youths fell behind significantly. Since I was toward the rear, I stayed back with him while the other safety ministry members continued with the float and the rest of the church. That was not a dramatic moment, but it was an important one. Without someone paying attention at the back, that child could have ended up separated from the group in the middle of a public event. And maybe nothing serious would have happened, but separation creates uncertainty fast. Once a child is out of the flow of the group, now people have to figure out where he is, who saw him last, whether someone stayed with him, and how far ahead the rest of the group has gone. Because I was already at the rear and paying attention, the situation stayed simple. I stayed with him. The group kept moving. The child was not alone. And that is exactly the kind of thing safety ministry can help with during a parade. Not every safety concern looks like an emergency. Many are ordinary situations that stay ordinary because someone noticed them early. That experience also showed why communication matters. We did not have radios at that parade. At the time, we made it work, but afterward, we recognized that radios would have helped us coordinate better. If someone at the rear had needed to communicate with someone near the float, or if a child fell behind, like one did, or the group needed to slow down, radios would have made it easier. So for future parades, we decided we would bring radios with earpieces. It's a simple adjustment, but it does make sense. Phones can work in some situations, but they are not always ideal during a moving event. You may not hear the phone or feel it vibrate. You may not have time to make a quick call. A quick radio message can be much more practical when the group is moving and attention needs to stay on the surroundings. Again, it's not about making the event feel like a security detail. It's about giving the team a way to communicate without disrupting the event. The staging area before a parade is also worth thinking about. People often focus on the parade route itself, but the staging area can be just as chaotic. Groups are lining up and vehicles are moving into position. People are finding their place, and children may be excited and impatient, and someone may need to use a bathroom. Others may be arriving late. The event has not officially started yet, but the safety concerns already exist. At our parade, we arrived in groups so nobody was left behind or missing. If somebody had to stop to use a bathroom, at least one or two others stayed with them. That's simple, but it's wise. Before the parade even starts, the church should avoid having people scattered, isolated, or unaccounted for. That is especially true with children, but honestly, it's good practice for the whole group. A public event has a lot of moving parts. Staying together makes everything easier. The end of the parade also matters. There is a natural tendency to relax when the route is over. The float stops and people are tired and everyone starts thinking about getting back to their cars and packing their things up or heading home. But at the end of the route, it can be just as disorganized as the beginning. Groups are breaking apart and vehicles are moving again. People are trying to find parking areas and parents are gathering their children. Some participants may be walking in different directions. At our parade, people left in groups and we were parked fairly close to each other, and that helped. There was not a sense of everyone scattering in random directions. The group stayed fairly connected enough to make sure people got where they needed to go. That may not sound like a big deal, but again, a lot of safety ministry is made up of simple decisions that prevent confusion. Now, I want to come back to the balance, because I think this is the part safety ministry members need to hear clearly. You can enjoy the parade. You can smile. You can wave. You can talk with people. You can be a part of the church's public presence. Being safety-minded does not mean you stand there, stone-faced like you are guarding a federal building. That would probably hurt the church's witness more than it would help it. When the church steps into the crowd, people are watching more than the float. They are seeing the spirit of the church. They are seeing how church members interact with the community, and they are seeing whether church seems warm, approachable, and genuine. Safety ministry members are part of that witness, so yes, enjoy it, but enjoy it with your eyes open. That's the balance. There's a difference between being relaxed and being unaware. A safety ministry member at a parade should be able to laugh with the group while still noticing if a child falls behind. They should be able to wave at the crowd while still paying attention to the float. And they should be able to enjoy the event while still recognizing when the group is getting too spread out. That kind of awareness does not have to be obvious to everyone else. In fact, it is probably better when it is not. The goal is not to draw attention to yourself. The goal is to serve the church quietly while still participating in the event. And that may be one of the bigger lessons here. Safety ministry is not only for Sunday morning services. It follows the church into places where the church is doing ministry. Sometimes that is inside a sanctuary. Sometimes it is in children's ministry. Sometimes it's in the parking lot. Sometimes it is at a community parade where the church is walking beside a float, handing candy to kids and representing Christ in public. The role may look different depending on the setting, but the heart is the same. Serve, pay attention, protect without becoming a distraction, support the ministry without taking over. For churches that participate in parades, I think it's worth having a conversation before the event. Not a long, complicated meeting, just enough planning so people understand how the group is going to move, where the children will be, who is watching the float, whether radios will be used, and how candy will be handed out, and what happens if someone gets separated. That kind of conversation can prevent a lot of confusion later. And if your church has a safety ministry, involve them early. Do not wait until the day of the parade and assume they will just figure it out while walking. The more public and crowded the event is, the more important it is to think ahead. This can apply to other public events as well. A church booth in a city festival, an outdoor outreach, community trunk or treat, prayer tent, or church present at a local event may not look exactly like a parade, but the same basic issue is there. The church is outside its normal environment, and that means the church needs to be aware of its space, the people, the movement, and the children involved. Again, not with fear, with wisdom. Matthew 10:16 gives us that balance, wise as serpents and innocent as doves. That is a good picture for this. Be innocent in the sense that we are not out there looking for conflict. We are not trying to intimidate, and we are not treating the community like the enemy. We are there to represent Christ. But be wise enough to understand that public spaces are unpredictable, and both truths matter. So when a church steps into the crowd, the safety ministry has a unique role. It should blend into the life of the church while paying attention to what others may miss. It should support the joy of the event, not drain it. It should help children participate safely, and it should keep an eye on movement, vehicles, spacing, and separation. It should communicate well and represent the church with the same warmth and humility expected from anyone else in the congregation. Because safety ministry is still ministry, even at a parade, maybe especially at a parade. A church in the public square should look like a church: gracious, approachable, joyful, but also wise, prepared, and attentive to the people entrusted to its care. That's the balance. Thank you for listening to Sanctuary Peacemakers. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Sanctuary Peacemakers. If today's conversation added value, be sure to tune in next week as we continue equipping and encouraging those who serve and protect houses of worship. A special thanks to Haley Jones for granting permission to use her song Not Today in our introduction, and to Leslie Jones for allowing us to use the song Sound Mind as our outro music. As always, y'all stay safe and y'all stay blessed.